Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. We're running a day early today because of scheduling conflicts, and we have a couple of announcements before we hand it over to Stan. We're going to be talking about roof inspections. Our first announcement today is you've probably all seen our new newsletter. You can find it on our website under newsletter on the front page. And then you can either download it. It's not too long. It's about a little longer than a page or two, but it's got some nice information in there. Keeps you updated with some local news. The other exciting thing we have now is if you go to our website and you'll see a link there, download logo or logo downloads, I think it's called. And for every class now, we're going to be issuing a logo. So like today's roof inspections, you'll be able to post that logo that you completed the course. It's certified, and you can have it on your website, your marketing material. And then since you're all here, I'm going to send out a separate email, but that is password protected. So only members can get those logos, and the password is Cornerstone. So after you're done watching, you can go download that logo. You just hover over it, right click, and you can download it to your desktop, and then you can use it on your marketing material or your website. So we'll have, those will start, I think I have the well that we did, or the pools we did. I have the roof inspections, and going forward, we'll have a logo for every webinar that we do. So I will hand it over to Stan, and you can start the webinar.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for accommodating us on this Monday. Today we're going to, my presentation is no longer on my screen.
Oh, okay. All right, hold on.
Today we're going to get down to basics.
Can you see it?
Nope. Hold on, guys.
Try switching. So, Peter, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, it says asphalt roof inspections.
Yeah, but there's Jim, there's nothing. Just the first page.
This is
just the first page.
And a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So that's
the main one that we do with every presentation.
Says welcome to the event.
Oh, that's so you're not seeing the PowerPoint. All right, hold on one second.
I was.
Let me try screen sharing. Hold on. Let me reload it.
How's it going, Peter?
Very well.
Yeah, how's the electrical part of your home inspection going? Any changes lately or no?
It's been the same. I got in contact with an electrician that comes out. He charges $250 if they want to look at the panel. He comes, looks at the panel, and makes a little report.
So he's capable of making a report?
Yeah, he does a report right there and hands it to him.
Okay.
That better, Stan?
There it is.
Okay, so go ahead. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Today we're going to get back to basics on the residential roof inspection, specifically for asphalt shingle surfaces. Okay, Jim. So the roof is the structure forming the upper covering of a building or vehicle. The roof is, in my opinion, the second most important component of the home after the foundation. A well-constructed roof will shield the interior of the home and its occupants from wind, rain, snow, cold, heat, and much, much more. So recently, we have to include a connection to the Connecticut state standards for those of you who are watching this in order to be approved, to have these webinars approved. So we'll just go through real quick. Purpose of regulations is to establish a minimum and uniform and by the way, this is pretty standard for most states that have some type of regulation and standards. They may have the wording a little different, but it does apply to all of us that are in this group. They all establish a minimum and uniform standard for the home inspector who provides or offers to provide a home inspection. The inspector shall inspect readily accessible systems and components of the home and install systems and components of the home. So the roof is one of those. The inspector shall report on those systems and components inspected, which, in the professional opinion of the inspector, are significantly deficient and are near the end of their useful service life. So we're going to talk about that and how to determine that with the roof, with the asphalt shingles. The inspector shall provide a reason why, if not self-evident, the system or component is significantly deficient or near the end of its service life, and the inspector shall provide recommendations to correct or monitor the reported deficiency. The inspector shall inspect the roof covering, the roof drainage systems, the flashing, the skylight, the chimneys, the roof penetrations. The inspector shall describe the roof coverings and report the methods used to inspect the roof. The inspector is not required to inspect the antenna, interior of flues or chimneys which are not readily accessible, or other installed accessories. Note, nowhere does it state that you must report the defects. And most components, we're supposed to be able to tell you whether they're functional or not, if they're approaching the end of their useful life, and for whatever reason, if they need further evaluation by a professional. So that brings us to asphalt shingles. The asphalt roofing shingle is the most common roofing material. It is a shingle manufactured by coating a reinforced material, felt or fibrous glass mat, with asphalt and having mineral granulars on the side exposed to the weather. The material is relatively inexpensive, durable, and fairly simple to install. They have a useful life range of 20 to 40 plus years. Asphalt shingles are an American invention by Henry Reynolds of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They were first used in 1903, in general use in parts of America by 1911, and by 1939, 11 million squares of shingles were being produced. Okay, Jim, the types of shingles. So there's two basic base materials used to make asphalt shingles, organic and fiberglass. Both are made in a similar manner, with an asphalt saturated base covered on one or both sides with asphalt or modified asphalt. The exposed surface impregnated with slate, schist, quartz, vitrified brick, stone, or ceramic granulars, and the underside treated with sand, talc, or mica to prevent the shingles from sticking to one another before use. So if you look at the picture on the top, you'll see the various layers of the shingles and how they're put together. The top surface granulars block ultraviolet light, which causes the shingles to deteriorate, provides some physical protection of the asphalt core, and provides color. Lighter shades preferred for their heat reflectivity in summer and sunny climates, darker and cooler ones for their absorption of heat. Some shingles have copper or other biocides added to the surface to help prevent algae growth. Self-sealing strips are standard on the underside of the shingles to provide resistance to lifting in high winds. This material is typically limestone or fly ash modified resins or polymer modified bitumen. So if you look at the bottom picture, you'll see a comparison of how a fiberglass shingle will wear versus the organic. The organic has a tendency to curl or cup, delaminate, lose all the granular surface. The fiberglass will kind of stay flat, but you'll start to see the edges showing the granular loss, and then you'll start to see a pattern of granular loss in the body of the shingle. And these are easier ones to determine, the 3-tab, because they're more regimented in their appearance. Okay, Jim.
I want to step in, Stan, for just 1 second on the organic. We have, I don't know if anybody knows, but in Connecticut we have the Travelers Tournament, the golf tournament here in Cromwell, and those houses built there, and there's quite a many of them, used all organic shingles. And within 10, 12 years of them putting them on, they all started looking terrible. And you know, those houses were going anywhere from 750 to 1.5 million. and they had a lawsuit, I guess, with the builder. The builder turned around, looked at the roofer, the manufacturer. The manufacturer offered a coupon to all those houses. The only thing they didn't offer was installation. So you could take that coupon, go to a roofer. The roofer could get new shingles and replace that organic shingle, because that was a big problem with those shingles, I guess, in the I think it was the early 2000s, mid 2000s.
So that was the end of the organic.
Yeah,
they were taking a beating by the fiberglass by that time. So fiberglass shingles were first manufactured in the 1970s. Prior to that, organic shingles were the only type available until 1960, when fiberglass shingles were introduced. By the early 1980s, fiberglass reinforcement mats impregnated with stabilized waterproofing bitumen were introduced, improving asphalt roofing shingle design. I'm going to disagree with that, and I'll tell you why as we come up to. So when I first got into this business, in '89, the organic was still more prevalent, and the fiberglass was just coming into popularity. And I was privileged at that early time, into the mid '90s, to find cracking, and this was, there was still 3-tab and there was architectural, finding cracked shingles early on in the roof life. 4, 5, 6 years down the line, the shingles would crack. So there were defects that developed early on with the fiberglass shingles. They would begin to crack after just a few years of exposure. The cracks would be horizontal, diagonal, and vertical, and they developed in all climates across the country with all manufacturers. So it wasn't just one brand, GAF, whatever. It was all manufacturers. It was thought to have been the result of expansion and contraction of the different roofing materials. So you got the fiberglass mat shingle, you have plywood underlayment, you have felt paper. All those things are moving at different rates, and were stretching the shingles and cracking them, was the theory. They eventually determined that it was the ratio of asphalt and the composition of the shingle. And once they made their corrections, obviously that's no longer the case. So the cause was eventually found and corrected, but I was kind of in the middle of all that. So you get on a roof and you see 5 or 6, it's relatively new roof, and you see 5, 6, 7 shingles cracked, and then people go, "Oh, we'll replace those." And I said, you can get back on here in 6 months and find another 5 or 6 cracked. That's a defect. And I don't know how things were handled. And you're right, they would not, even under a warranty, they would not cover the labor, only give you new shingles. Right. Okay, Jim. So organic mat, like we were talking before, the cupping, the curling, the loss of the granulars in the body of the shingle, and those look like Frito-Lay chips on the right there. Ready to be dipped. But that's kind of what they used to wind up looking like as they were older. Okay, Jim. And then the fiberglass as they wear. If you look at the edges on the left, you'll see the mat exposed. And even the color range in the middle, that's not a color range, that's granular loss on that roof. That roof was ready to be replaced. I don't know how anybody in watching this today handles that, but when I see a roof like that, I tell them that it should be replaced, because you're taking a gamble on how long it's going to last. And for the most part, somebody's got their money's worth out of it. Unfortunately today, people are buying houses with roofs like that and not able to negotiate them, because that's just the way the market's for what it's forcing people to do. But that to me is a done deal on that roof. And then you have little tears in the shingles, like the one in the middle. Could just be some kind of damage from somebody walking on the roof, something hitting the roof. My question would be, could water get through that fiberglass mat? It is overlapping the other shingle. Is that a huge deal? That in itself is probably not a major issue. And then on the right, you have that cracking pattern that somebody marked off. as a defect or a shingle manufacturer's defect. So that's fiberglass. So
Yeah.
the 3-tab shingle. Yep. Was somebody
Oh,
gonna say something?
Yeah, just want to add to that, and I've been hearing, I don't know how, Pete and everybody else in other states, I'm assuming the same thing, but if the roof has a lot moss, lichen, any algae staining, or if it's an older roof, some of these insurance companies are saying to replace it or clean it off or replace it, or they're not insuring the homeowner. So the roof may look pretty good to us, and or it's older, it's near or at the end of its design life, but it has worn well overall for its age. However you want to write it in there. Sometimes the insurance companies are sending their adjusters out, they're doing satellite on it, and they're saying clean it or replace it. So that's become a problem.
Yeah, I'm on all those Facebook groups, and that's becoming a hot topic now. It's coming up a lot. These guys are getting questions from their clients after they apply for their insurance. So we'll have to see where that goes. So the 3-tab shingle. 3-tab shingle gets their name from the 3 asphalt tabs on every shingle. They are designed in a single flat layer with the 3 tabs placed evenly apart on the lower edge. These tabs fit together like a simple puzzle piece when the shingles are installed. The result is a very uniform, flattened pattern of rectangular shingles. Very clean look, especially with the lighter colors. 3-tab shingle have been around for a long, long time, and most roofers are very familiar with them. They are very simple. Design makes them easy to install and easy to repair because the shingle pattern is always the same. You know exactly what you are getting. These thin shingles are also some of the most affordable shingles on the market were. I don't think they're hard to get now. So they are a good choice if you need to save money. The 3-tab shingle option is falling out of favor. Yes, it is. In the residential roofing world, also, these shingles are more easily damaged than other types of shingles and may wear out faster. So it is 3-tab. When I put my roof on 2 years ago, 3-tab, not that I wanted one, was not available. It wasn't even in the picture at that time, at least by the guys that I talked to. So the laminated shingle. Laminated shingles are also known as architectural or dimensional shingles. They are dimensional because the shingle tabs come in different shapes and sizes. And when installed, this makes the shingles look more layered and interesting, a natural look with less of a clear pattern. These shingles are typically made with a double layer that makes them much thicker than the 3-tab shingle, hence dimensional, or some people call them the laminated shingle. Dimensional or laminated shingles are currently a very popular option for homeowners and can even raise the value of your house if you are switching from a 3-tab to dimensional. Not only do they look great on nearly any house, they are also one of the most durable types of shingles. This is why their warranties tend to last as long as 30 to 50 years. While these shingles have a lot of advantages, they are also more expensive than 3-tab shingles, which can raise the cost of a roofing project. It's also important to note that dimensional shingles weigh a lot more than 3-tab options, and a rooftop may not be able to support the weight without some structural changes. So I think we can all say, I know I could say without even thinking twice about it, because we see the outside of the roof, we see that there's asphalt shingles on it. Sometimes we may see 2 layers of shingles on there, or the 3-tab architectural, and we get in the attic and we look at the attic, and I can't remember the last time I saw a roof that may have been modified to be able to take an architectural shingle. So I think that's a little bit reaching there, that you have to beef it up because it's so much heavier. But in any event, they are very popular now, and I don't remember the last time I seen a newly installed 3-tab shingle. So now we're going to talk about methods of inspecting a roof. So depending on the pitch of the roof, the terrain of the property, and the capability of the inspector, there are several ways of inspecting roof surfaces. So mounting and traversing. The best and most effective method to determine the condition of a roof surface material is to access, mount, and traverse the roof. This will allow for an up-close and personal relationship between the inspector and component. Mounting certain roof materials like slate, cement, ceramic, and wood roofs is generally not advised for safety and to minimize possible damage to the material. So the inspector must be prepared with a ladder that is capable of reaching past the eaves. The pitch must be walkable without additional equipment. The inspector must be comfortable at heights, and the property should be conducive to safely setting up the ladder. Being as safe as possible, the inspector can walk the roof surface, scanning for dry and brittle asphalt shingles, nail pops, cracking or tearing material, damaged or missing material, torn or worn plumbing vent roots, loose or missing flashing, heavily caulked flashing, and skylights, among many other things. So when I was young, so much younger than today, I got on as many roofs as I could. And you know, obviously it is up close and personal, and probably the best way to determine what condition the roof is in. But you really don't have to. There's other things that you can look at even from the eaves. We'll talk about that in a minute. And all you got to do is see a couple things, and you can make your call, I think, safely. You don't have to really get too nuts about it unless you want to be a superhero home inspector. So if you're viewing this webinar as a pre-recorded webinar, record this viewing code, RI121234. There'll be one more coming up later on in this webinar, and send them off to us to get your certificate. So we're going to touch base a little bit on ladder safety, just because we're talking about getting on a roof. So reducing fault. Yep.
One second. Could you just talk to some of the members regarding when you get on the roof, when the shingles are real hot? If people decide to get up on there, I try to get up on there, and when they're older, and I'm just going to use my own personal roof. What are some of the things that you got to be careful of? Because obviously you don't want to create a problem when there wasn't any there, or there might have been, and take note of that too. We were talking about that earlier.
Right. So if it's really, really, really hot outside, and especially if it's been hot a long time, you can mar a shingle just by stepping on it, the angle of your boot, your shoe, whatever. Don't forget, our clients don't own that house yet. I'm not even going to say we're invited into the house, but we're allowed into the house by the homeowner. And I think most of us try to leave that house in the condition it was in when we found it. So there's always a slight possibility of damaging a roof when it's hot out. When it's cold out, it could be very brittle. When it's an older roof, you can knock granulars off. As a matter of fact, for your own safety, I got on a roof a couple years ago, and the pitch didn't look as much as it was when I got on the roof. And the granulars were so loose and the shingles were so dry, I just started sliding down the roof. The ladder looked like it was a million miles away. I somehow stopped myself. I got off that roof. There was nobody there to catch me. And I just sat on the front stoop and took a couple deep breaths, and decided I will evaluate the roof a lot closer before I get on it. So you can do damage, and you just need to be very careful. And of course, you can hurt yourself. So that's why we're going to talk about ladders. But you want to add something to that, Scott? Oh, Scott's gone. So
okay, go ahead.
Safe use of extension ladders.
Go ahead, Stan. I'm sorry.
Do you have something else to add to that?
No. I broke my rib falling off a ladder. I'll explain how it happened. And it was not even that high, but I'll let you go to the ladder safety and just give my own personal story. So hopefully people are aware of it, because I'm definitely aware of it now.
I think sometimes when you do something day in, day out, you can lose a little bit of focus. You can take it for granted. And I think you really got to focus on what you're doing every single day, like it's the first time you're doing it. So workers who use extension ladders risk permanent injury or death from falls and electrocutions. These hazards can be eliminated or substantially reduced by following good safety practices. Go ahead, Jim. You can go to the next one. So use a ladder that can. This I find a little. They're all rated for weight. So if you have a 300-pound ladder, that means you have to be 75 pounds. It says use a ladder that can sustain at least 4 times the maximum intended load, except that in each extra duty heavy ladder, type 1A metal or plastic ladder shall sustain at least 3.3 times the maximum intended load. So, you know, my fiberglass ladder was 1A and I was 250 pounds, 260 at one time. And so I don't know what that ladder was. I don't think it was 3.3 times that. A competent person must visually inspect all extension ladders before using use for any defects such as missing rungs, bolts, cleats, screws, loose components. I think if you're using your own ladder every day, you know what condition it is, but it doesn't hurt to take a look at it on a regular basis. Allow sufficient room to step off the ladder. Keep the area around the bottom and top of the ladder clear of equipment, materials, and tools. If access is obstructed, secure the top of the ladder to a rigid support that will not deflect, and add a grasping device to allow workers safe access. This is more for commercial, but we should be paying attention to this too. Okay, Jim. Set the ladder up at a proper angle. So I was taught a long, long time ago that if you're going up, I'm going to say 20 feet, your ladder should be 25% of that height away from the wall at the bottom. And of course, on a level surface, and it should be overlapping the ladder. If it's an extension, should not be more than 3 feet, less than 3 feet. And you should at least have your ladder over the roof line by 3 feet. Before starting work, survey the potential hazards such as energy lines, power lines. Ladders shall have non-conductive side rails. Yeah, we're going to skip that one. I don't think anybody has side rails. And then set the base of the ladder so the bottom is secure, and the ladder rail should be square to the structure against which it is leaning, and both foot pads placed securely on a stable and level surface. And they always want you to secure the ladder, and you're supposed to fence off the ladder in a high traffic area, which we don't really work in. Next, Jim. So some illustrations. I used to work with a guy who, let's say the ladder ended like 6 inches above the gutter. He would walk straight up that ladder and right off onto the roof. I could never do that. I have to go off one side or the other. So I need that 3 feet to hang on to while I'm getting on the roof. And always have 3 points of contact. 1 hand, 2 feet, 2 hands, 1 foot. No hopping up the ladder. Next, Jim. So some of the do's: maintain 3 points of contact, face the ladder when climbing up or descending, keep the body inside the side rail, use extra care when getting off the ladder at the top or bottom, carry tools in a tool belt, not in your hand, extend the top of the ladder 3 feet above the landing, keep ladders free of any slippery materials. Next, I think, is don'ts. Jim?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Place the ladder. Do not place the ladder on boxes, barrels, or unstable bases. Use the ladder on soft ground or unstable footing. Do not exceed the ladder's maximum load rating. Do not tie 2 ladders together to make them longer. Do not ignore nearby overhead power lines. Do not move or shift the ladder with a person or equipment on the ladder. Do not lean out beyond the ladder side rails. Do not use an extension ladder horizontally like a platform.
Dan, what's your opinion on ladders on decks?
I do it, but I do it very carefully. And I usually have my client foot the ladder if I need to put a ladder on a deck.
Okay, because I basically have trained people not to do it, but again, sometimes it's the only way. But go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
That's how I broke my ribs. It was I was 10 feet. I just put the ladder up, and the deck had some moss on it. A moss mildew. And when I stepped up, I went up, I extended it even more. I stepped off, and the ladder went, and I came flying down. I ended up hitting my side against the ladder, broke my ribs. Went around in circles for a little bit because it knocked the wind out of me, and then I actually finished the inspections. And there's not, obviously they don't do much for ribs other than being in a lot of pain and fracture them. So what I do now, the other thing too, that's just my pet peeve as an inspector. Again, going back to what Stan said about not damaging anything, and I see guys do it all the time, and probably everybody here is guilty of it. I have a standoff. Like some of the gutters are not like back in the day where some of those, there was a lot thicker aluminum. You could lay the ladder against it and they didn't flex or bend. Some of these new gutters on newer homes, you put the ladder up against it, you can bend it, scratch it. And, you know, if you damage it, people are not going to be happy. So you got to be aware of that too. So if you can get one of those standoffs, you know, they're like a little stabilizer, you can add that to it and then put the ladder up on the roof. And then sometimes people will slide the ladder, move it over, and they scratch the gutter. I mean, even on my house, and I'm starting to paint it, I'm being careful of that because my gutters will bend and they will scratch up. So going back to what you're saying, Jim, I do like a lot of raised ranches when I get up on the roof. Rather than going in the front, I'll go around my shorter ladder in the back and on the deck, and I'll climb up that way. It's a lot lower, and I'm careful to sometimes I'll flip the feet up a little bit and I'll kind of, without damaging the deck, I'm careful because you got everything's Trex. You got to be real careful. I'll flip it up a little bit and I'll kind of catch it in the deck where I'm not going to damage the deck and I can still get up there. And sometimes I'll have a client foot it while I jump up. A lot of times I go earlier and get up on the roof, so I'm by myself. And sometimes there's a railing or there's something I can kind of place it against. You just got to be careful because it did slip out on me, and especially when it's wet or somebody hoses off the deck, you just got to be careful. But you know, you don't have to get off the roof. Some guys are using I like to put my eye on it. Stan will agree, I'm sure Jim will agree. I like to look at the roof, so at least get up to the eaves. I mean, the drones are great, people are using them. I think they have a purpose, but any residential home I can get up with my ladder on or at least get up to the eaves. But the other thing too is I didn't tie it off with bungee cords when it was windy. And I kind of got burnt twice. Once I got up on a roof and the ladder blew down and I had to wave to the neighbor to come over and put the ladder back up. That was years ago. And then the second time I left the ladder up on a windy, well, it wasn't really a windy day. It was like in May and then the wind came around. So if you leave your ladder up and you go around to the front with your clients and like, oh, I'll get the ladder at the end of the inspection. Just be careful if it's windy out because my ladder came crashing down on Trex decking railing and I had to, you know, replace the railing. You know, fortunately I could do that, but you may not be able to do that and you'll have to hire somebody. So you might want to take the ladder down, lay it down when you're done or put it back on your vehicle if you're going to, you know, use a large ladder, extension ladder. That's just a couple of my stories, but I'm very careful.
One last one real quick. I just recently got rid of my 30-some-odd-year-old fiberglass ladder. It was starting to crack and all the fiberglass was being exposed, so it was getting on my hands. And now I have an aluminum ladder, and the aluminum ladder slides on the gutters like no tomorrow. So I bought these clamps. They clamp on between the ladder and the gutter, and they have a bungee cord and they tie around. So they kind of, but I haven't used it yet, but those will secure the ladder in place. It wouldn't stop the feet from kicking out, or maybe it would help it, but you know, there's a lot of things that you can do to ensure your safety, and we want everybody safe. So if you don't want to get on a roof or the pitch is too high, I recommend, and Scott was just talking about this, to at least try and view it from the eaves by ladder. This way, you can observe much of what you need to see from the eaves if you choose the right location. And ideally, you want to be near the chimney and within sight of the plumbing vents. You may need to move your ladder to different locations to be as thorough as possible. You know, I like to bend the shingles. I want to know how dry those babies are. You know, if they start to snap at the eaves there, or if I can lift the shingles that I can reach, I know, you know, there's a certain call I'll make on that, but you only need to identify the basic condition of the material, not every single nail pop, not every cracked and loose shingle. You see a couple of them, then I think you could make a pretty good evaluation of the roof, because most of those things will indicate that it's older and at the end of its useful life, but we're going to get into that. Okay, Jim. From the ground with binoculars. So most of the roof surface on high pitched roofs like those of Cape Cods, Victorians, and many colonials may be visible from the ground and can be scanned from the ground with binoculars if you had to. Unfortunately, lower pitch roofs and flat roofs cannot be adequately evaluated from the ground. So like raised ranches have very low pitch. You're not going to see the actual shingle. You may see the edges of them. You're not going to be able to tell much. You're going to have to either get up there at the eaves or on the roof, or next slide. evaluate with a drone. The newest method of roof evaluation is by drone. If you are proficient at piloting a drone, you can inspect the roof from the air. When using a drone for commercial purposes, you must be licensed through the FAA and meet certain restrictions. Check with local authorities regarding flying drones commercially. Also be aware of the difficulty flying in bad weather, as well as losing control of the drone or crashing it and damaging property or injuring bystanders. So in my area, there's a lot of airports, and the closer you get to the airport, the lower you may have to fly or not fly at all. I am considering one, but I'm not sure at this point if I will and what I'll buy and how often I'll use it. But it's the wave of the future right now, and I think you can see what you need to see. But I still I'm old school. I want to touch those shingles if I can. I want to bend them. I want to see if they lift. And you can't do that. You could see lifted shingles, you could see damaged shingles, but you can't touch them and move them yourself. So, but I think you could see enough to make a proper call. And don't forget, is the roof functional or not is all we really have to determine. Is it keeping out the weather like it was intended to? And then is it older and at the end of its useful life? So in general, when performing a home inspection, the inspector is to determine if a component is functional or non-functional. In the case of roofing material, its sole purpose is to provide a weatherproof barrier for the roof structure and prevent the elements from entering the structure. So no matter what defects and imperfections may be observed or what the age of the roofing material is, if it is not leaking, it is functioning as intended. The inspector's observations will determine the integrity of the material. Defects or imperfections that may be discovered may be due to the environment, lack of maintenance, poor installation and or workmanship, poor quality materials, and should be, for me, written up as such. Often with minor repairs, a roof surface that may be leaking can be restored to a viable and reliable roof that will continue to provide service to the structure and the occupants. So just because we may find a leak doesn't mean that the whole roof is shot. It is important that an inspector analyze all of his or her findings and put the overall assessment into proper perspective. Next slide, Jim. So moss growth, as Scott had mentioned, I don't know if we actually started a webinar, if there was a little pre-web chat. Moss growth is starting to become, look, it was always an issue for me. I would report on it. I would tell them it would ruin a roof. But now insurance companies are getting really, really involved when they're issuing policies. They're actually looking at roofs with satellites. I've heard that some are sending out people with drones. Some are asking for the permit for the roof with a date on it. So just be prepared as you are moving on with your home inspection career that these things may be rearing their ugly heads after you're done. So moss is a bryophyte that develops from water-based plants. The carpet of moss is generally springy to the touch. While moss requires water to grow, it cannot grow immersed in water. Moss will strip away the protective oils of the shingles, making them susceptible to erosion and sun damage. Without any protection, your shingle will warp and crack in the sun, significantly shortening their lifespan. So moss absorbs water, so every time it rains, the moss sucks up the moisture and spreads farther across your shingles, eating away at the outer protective layer and ruining your shingles. So a couple years ago, before the new roof went on, I cleaned, there's trees overhanging one side of my whole property, but over my garage. So I sprayed all the moss when I was cleaning the gutters and forgot about it. And the next year when I went to clean the gutters, the moss was all gone. Every single bit of it with, I think it was Wet and Forget. It's pretty popular moss remover. But what was there, you can see the imprint where the granulars were damaged by the moss growth. So you still see that the moss was on there and that it probably took a little bit of the life away of the roof. However, that roof was old and replaced a couple years later anyways. So this is getting to be a big issue with the insurance companies. Next, Jim. Algae growth, same thing. It's supposedly can damage your roof. It feeds off the asphalt limestone. It weakens the roof shingles and structural integrity, which may cause some shingles to detach. Damage from algae may also weaken your roof's ability to reflect sunlight, causing more heat to radiate through your home. This effect is especially brutal during the summer months. So I don't remember seeing as much algae on roofs as I do now. When my roof was put on 2 years ago, it has a 7-year warranty against algae growth. So I guess it's, a recognized concern in the shingle manufacturers, but whatever they put in it probably has its effect wears off after that many years, and then you're right back at it. So there are people that can wash. Well, let's go to the next one, Jim. So lichen
is copper granules, but when they patina up, they're probably not as effective,
So lichen is a combination of algae and fungi. Lichen is not technically a plant at all, but rather a type of fungus that exists in a symbiotic relationship with algae. There are 4 types of lichen with varying appearances, and it is easy to mistake lichen for moss. Over time, it actually latches onto your roofing material and will damage your roof. So all 3 of these things are becoming an issue with the insurance companies. And, when I say you should, doesn't mean you should, but I'm just saying that I want to cover my butt. And you know me, if you're covering your butt, you're going to be doing the right thing for your clients. You got to let them know that, number 1, it'll damage your roof, and number 2, they may have trouble getting insurance. And when I first started saying that, the realtors were kind of mad, but now they're starting to get the flack because it's becoming more and more prevalent now with the insurance companies reaching out. So I want to give them a kind of a pre-game notice that this may be coming down the line. Actually, when I changed insurance companies or renewed, I forgot what it was a couple of years ago, my roof was older, but it had no moss, but a lot of the algae, and they told me I had to wash my roof before they would issue a policy. I never did. I just had my agent find me another insurance company. But so I knew that was coming down the line several years ago. Patch roofing. If you see patching, you're seeing a problematic roof. In the case of vertical planes of a mansard roof and gambrel roof, if not installed properly, the weight of the shingle will cause them to eventually loosen and dislodge. In this case, improper nailing and multiple layers of material certainly didn't help the matter. So this house had patches all over it. We got a couple more pictures, different houses. What else can you say? When I was a kid and bicycles had tires, we put so many patches on those tubes that you just eventually couldn't get them inside the tire and rim anymore. So I learned my lesson back then. You got it. This roof needs to be replaced. So this was a roof that I did. Some of these pictures are pretty old. You'll see the date codes on some of them. These are nail pops, and you can see some of the others are starting to lift. They didn't bust through yet. And obviously this must have been a problem on the inside because somebody got up there and just slapped on the roof cement. So you can't make any other call other than this is a problematic roof and should be replaced, in my opinion. So this is viewing code number 2, RI221234. Send this code with the previous code to us, and we will send you out your certificate. Patched roofing. If you see roof cement, there is a reason for it, right? It's likely leakage. Now, again, depending on how you're inspecting the roof, this you will not miss if you get on the roof, if it's mountable. You can probably see this from the eaves if you put your ladder in the right spot, and you will probably see this with binoculars or a drone. But these are the kind of things that you want to at least mention. And if you were able to get in the attic or at a wall roof line in an area, you may even see that it might have been repainted or patched or currently leaking. Lifting shingles. Look at that, huh? That was on the shoreline of Milford. The roof is definitely in need of attention. Maybe they just didn't adhere properly in the first place, but there's just so many different color shingles on there, and lifting shingles and missing shingles, that roof had to, in my opinion, had to be replaced. Damaged shingles. Are these shingles lifting and then being blown off? If you look at the one that you just circled, Jim, right next to it is cracked. You know, so that day there were only 2. I come back 6 months, there could be 4. I kind of went through that roof as best I could, and there wasn't any that I saw or walked up to and tried to lift that were lifting. But these are the kind of things that's not probably not going to leak, right? Because the shingles overlap and there might be felt paper underneath it, but it's got to be pointed out, and you know, you want to protect your butt, so you got to have some kind of blurb about more possibly happening.
You can see where the nail, if you go back, Stan, just, I mean, basically the nail, right, is in the adhesive strip. And I see that a lot of times. They give you a line, and these are 3-tab, obviously the architectural, but you see where that nail is, it's right in the adhesive strip. Sometimes they shoot them in like crazy or hammer them in. That is an old roof. And
so the nail lifts and loosens the shingle. And here are nail pops, sometimes easy to find, sometimes not. These are things you may not see with binoculars, maybe not even from the roof's edge unless you're lucky. You put the ladder in the right place. And I'm not sure if you see all that kind of stuff with a drone, unless you had a really good drone with a good camera or were able to get close up to see that. But I'm always suspect of nail pops because, again, there could be more 6 months later. So these are the kind of things you want to look for. Deteriorated shingles. When you see this kind of deterioration, it's definitely an older roof. You don't need to really guess. You don't need to ask the homeowner how old it is. This is time for a new roof. And those are the bottom ones are matte, felt matte, organic. Okay, Jim. So older shingles, if the age of an asphalt shingle application is not known, there are several telltale signs that would indicate the material is older. Dry, brittle material. If you bend the corner of a shingle and it snaps off, the shingles, while functional, are older. If you do not want to damage the shingle in that manner, you will see the leading edge of the shingle deteriorating. Cracking an asphalt shingle. As an asphalt shingle ages, it dries and shrinks and causes surface cracks to develop. Granular loss. Older asphalt shingles will develop granular loss. So there's 2 times you see granular loss. When the roof is first put on, all the excess granulars will wash off and you'll find them in the gutters. And then as the roof ages, it'll start to develop again. And then cupping, as the material dries and shrinks, it cups and curls. Okay, Jim. Dry, brittle shingles. So you see the edges are starting to deteriorate. And if you, on that roof, if you lifted up a corner, you could snap it off. Just, there's no pliability left in those shingles. Functional roof, didn't really look bad from the road or from the ground, but once you got up close, you can see definitely an older roof. Cupping shingles. I like this picture because if you look a couple courses up where the eaves, there was pretty decent overhang there. It's cooler there, so the shingles didn't cup as much. But in the hot attic, that house had poor ventilation. Those shingles were baking from inside and out. So no ridge vent, no solid vents, just a gable vent. So I also recommended adding ventilation. I don't know how well you can see. So the keyways between the tabs and the shingles, when they're brand new, are nice and square. And as the shingles age, they'll round out and actually wear out. Can you see how the granular surface is starting to wear out in those keyways? All right, because the water's just running through them and taking those granulars right off. So again, that is an older roof. Functional, but older. And then again, the torn shingles. Now, this was not a defective new roof. This was a older roof that just started shrinking and tearing. So for me, that was a no-brainer. It had to go. Here's an older asphalt, fiberglass-based shingle. So you can see the mat exposed at the leading edge. The granulars are coming off. Definitely, they didn't know how old this house or this roof was. I love it when they say, well, we don't know how old a roof is, but it was on here when we bought the house 20 years ago. Well, okay, we know it's at least 20 years old then, you know. And this kind of granular loss is much more evident on a light colored shingle, right? Because you can see the black mat underneath the asphalt. If there's a black shingle, you probably wouldn't see it as much, but you'd certainly see the fiberglass sticking through at the edges. Okay, Jim. So this is Jeff attending today?
No.
No. Okay. So Jeff was an intern with me a while back, and we did this house in Hamden, Connecticut. So as soon as you pulled up, you could see all the lifting, wavy shingles. And when we finally got in the attic, and most of this attic was finished, but we had a couple places where we can get underneath. So if you look, and it was an older house, like maybe 1910. Oh, I put it in there. So it was 1910. So it had originally a wood roof. The wood roof was removed, but no plywood put on, if you look, between the skip sheathing. And then 2 layers of asphalt shingles on. And if you look closely, the nails aren't hitting any wood where they are applied between the skip sheathing. So those shingles are flapping in the wind right there. The ones with the nail pops, they'll blow off. And that roof wasn't that old. That was a second layer on there. So I had to call that out as a problematic roof. The shingles are more prone to lifting and being blown off. Not a happy homeowner, but hey.
And the other thing, Stan, to add to that, going back on some of your other stuff, even the tongue and groove, sometimes the nails either are too short or they shoot into the tongue and the groove, and that causes them to lift because they're not into a solid.
You know, Scott, that's a good point. Sometimes you'll see 2 layers of roofing, like if you look at the eaves or the rake, and then you go in the attic and you only see 1 set of nails, or maybe just the tip of the second nail coming through because they didn't use the proper length nails. You got to compensate for 2 layers of roofing. Okay, Jim. Roof wall flashing. You know, many leaks from roofs occur at the roof wall junction and at roof penetrations. The roof wall junction where existing should be inspected, not just at the exterior, but from within the living space. Where the attic junction sealed with roof cement were sealed for a reason. Also be suspect when flashing looks poorly installed, even if it appears to be functioning. So that bottom picture is just loaded with roof cement, which should not be necessary. That's a pretty new installation. So just, you know, be ready. That's all you could say. Roof penetrations. I don't know how many times you find the boots, the neoprene fatigued and cracked or stretched or warped. Got to be careful with skylights and the curb box. Those you can see from underneath. And what I find a lot is if you're not looking close and not shining your light on an angle, a lot I find have been patched and painted. And, you know, you gotta look hard at that stuff. I tell people that, you know, and I may be off base a little bit, but, you know, I don't think a skylight lasts much more than 20, 25 years. If you're changing your roof, you should be changing the skylight as well.
Absolutely.
Even if the skylight itself, the glass is going to fail, and you can't replace the glass section. You got to replace the whole skylight. Go ahead, Jim. Chimney flashing. While the chimney is usually evaluated as a separate component in most home inspection reports, at least in mine, chimney flashing can be considered part of roof inspection. There is a high probability rate that it has leaked in the past, especially in older roofs. My roof, not that the shingles had a lot longer to last, but I had to replace it because the chimney flashing was leaking. It leaked all winter, and I didn't want the shingle put on in the winter. I had to wait through the whole winter before I can have the roof on. So I waited 1 year too long to do my roof. But That's my chimney and my flashing. It should be evaluated both inside and out whenever access permits. Note signs of leakage in the attic, active or past leakage, as well as imperfections in the flashing material. The application of roof cement should be noted as it indicates potential past leakage. I think we can all agree on that. So reporting the findings. If you identify the defects discussed in this presentation and report on them accurately, you will have done your job. Most of the roofs depicted in these photos have no visible leakage. However, they should be reported on as older or older with defects that will increase the need for repairs or replacement. I have a statement that says, when it's an older roof, be prepared for leakage and needed repairs as this roof ages. And I always recommend replacement in that case. State standards require that we recommend the next step. In these cases, it would be prudent to minimally recommend evaluation by a roofing contractor. I don't often, if it's an older roof, I just say replace it to determine the scope and cost of repair and replacement. Next, Jim. So not accessible, very important, right? There will be roofs and or portions of roofing that you will not be able to see or inspect due to height or snow cover, among other things. Each area of roofing not visible and not evaluated should be noted in your report and the reason why it could not be evaluated. The roof could not be evaluated because it was covered with snow. Simple as that. You know, when I was young and dumb, I used to brush off 2-3 feet of snow to see at least what kind of shingle was in there, but that's no indication of the rest of the roof. So not accessible, solar panels. There will be roofs and or portions of roofing that you will not be able to see or inspect due to solar panel coverage. How do you cover this topic? You know, some of the roof, very little of that roof. I mean, I think that's a little overkill with solar panels, but there wasn't much to be able to say about that. Plus, depending on how the solar panels are installed, crap gets stuck behind them, could just sit there and just like ruin the roof that you can't even see, can't even get to. So you really got to figure out language to cover skylights when they're in place. The skylights now, when you can, and if you can, you got to get into that roof cavity, attic cavity, because I find a lot of them leaking where they're mounted to the rafters. These are 2 pictures of roof leaks from solar panels. So they got to call the solar panel company and see how that's going to be handled. Most of them are leased, so they're responsible for the maintenance. So that I did that roof, that house last summer, 2 summers ago, I forgot. So shingles are missing, blown off, just wicked bad shape. And the realtor asked, is it leaking? Who cares? That roof has to be replaced. Is that the last one, Jim? Oh, so I've always asked this question just as a conversation starter. Do we give some clients a better inspection than others? Should we inspect all roofs in the same manner? So I always felt like, oh man, I can get on this ranch roof. I can look at it really good. I can look at the chimney really good. Am I giving this guy a better inspection than the person who bought that Victorian where I can't even, there's no way I'm going to walk that roof? I'm going to say yes, right? Because I'm getting a better look at things. If you walk some roofs and not others for whatever reason, absolutely the answer is yes. But that's just for food for thought. So look at that, right on time today. So thanks for attending. Jim, when is the next one?
We have our next webinar coming up in, hold on, I'll tell you, calendar of events. June 18th. We have flat roofs with June 18th. Oh. June 18th. Yeah, it's Wednesday. So that we have a speaker coming in that day. So that's why it's another weird day. That's the only time he could do it. So if there's any, do we have any questions or anything from anybody, or are we all set? I think we're all set.
You guys
Okay.
good?
Yep. We'll
All
get
right.
your certificates right out and take a look at the newsletter. Again, the login for the logos, the password's Cornerstone, all lowercase, and then you can download your logo for attending tonight, and you'll be good to go. Thank you.
Thanks,
for
everybody.
attending.
Thank you very much. Great class. Thank you.